There's two that are available.
All right, looks like everybody's back. So remember, there's like kind of six different concepts we're looking at. And now we're going to look at what I would call big event jitters. So this is when people feel anxious about maybe presenting to the rest of the class or taking a test or some kind of thing like that. These could also be really good if you coach. Um, or if you, for example, work with theater or anything like that, anytime where there's like kind of a big thing and people feel anxious, what can they do? Well, I've got some strategies for you to use for yourself and to teach them. And the first one is what I call words matter. This is some really wild research. It's actually three separate research studies or sets of studies. So the first set of studies looked at the difference between saying, I have to do something versus I get to do something. And so the researchers looked at this in all kinds of ways. Like, for example, they looked at what if you say to yourself, all right, I have to exercise now versus I get to exercise now? Does it make a difference? And they found out, yes, it makes a huge difference if you say I get to instead of I have to. That makes sense with something we learned earlier, and that is that humans love to have autonomy. And when you say I get to, it means you have a choice. And if you say I have to, it feels like it's being imposed on you. So if you can use get to instead of have to, it makes a big difference. So that was one set of studies. Okay, so another group of researchers looked at the difference between saying to yourself, I feel nervous, or I'm nervous, versus this is exciting. Um, it's difficult to talk yourself from going from nervous to calm. Nervous is very far biochemically from calm. It's hard to get there. But excitement is only slightly different biochemically from being nervous. And so it's pretty easy to jump from feeling nervous to feeling excited. So if you can just say to yourself, I feel excited, or this is exciting, instead of saying to yourself, I'm nervous, that's going to help. Third study, group of people doing a completely separate study, they discovered that if you go from saying I to saying you when you talk to yourself, it really helps. Um, it's like you've got your own personal coach, sort of, who's talking to you. You can use this all the time for all kinds of things. Just instead of saying I, start talking back to your elephant by saying you really helps. Now, what happens if you put all three of those together? Now you've really got something big. So, the magic phrase is you are excited that you get to do this. And notice how like every single word is important in that. So, instead of saying I am nervous that I have to take this test or I'm nervous that I have to take this presentation, you're switching it to you are excited that you get to take this test. You're excited that you get to give this presentation. The excited that you get to do this part does seem a little far-fetched sometimes, but frankly, you are lucky that you get to take that test. There are millions of people across this globe who never have any chance for education at all. And you frankly are lucky. You are lucky that you get to take a test. You are lucky that you get to give a presentation. There are children all over the world who are, you know, trying to find food to eat, and you're getting to play in this tournament or play in this concert. So it's for real. You're excited that you get to do this. Here's another method, strategy you can use. Again, this is right before something big, test, presentation, performance. If you just take a moment to list a few values that are really important to you and write about why, it can make a huge difference in how anxious you are. Think for a minute about why you think that would work. Why would it work? The reason researchers think it works is that it takes you away from that all important, like present moment thing where I'm gonna test and helps you realize that it's just one action out of a much more important life. So, literally, you can have your whole class do this before a test. I have a friend who, once I taught her this, she started doing it before every test, and test scores started going up, and she ended up publishing about it and presenting on that. Highly recommend. Literally, spend 2 to 3 minutes. Just put a list of values up on the board. You can Google list of values. There's lots of lists out there. You can use this one. Have students write just for 2, 3 minutes. Very little time could have a huge payoff. Values affirmation. So that was big event jitters. Now, the second thing I want to look at in this part is when students feel like they're not sure they can do something, like they're lacking confidence or feeling a sort of fear about being able to do something. Let's take a look. Think for a moment, like about times in your life where you felt like that. Let's see what you could have done. So, generally, when I'm talking to students about this, I really want to start by making sure, no matter what strategy I use, that I want them to know that it's just incredibly common to feel these things, to feel like maybe you're not in the same league as the other students, or you're not up to the challenge, or you don't belong, or you're afraid. These are all really, really common things. You might have had feelings like this when you first came into this program. Maybe you thought, am I really up to a master's degree? And yet, probably by now you're starting to, or maybe very much feeling like, yes, I definitely am. Or it's very common with teachers. Like when you first start teaching, you often might feel like you don't know enough. Um, Common, very common. So what can you do? Well, um, one thing you can do is what's called letter from my future self. So what researchers did was they had people imagine themselves several years in the future and to imagine that they've successfully accomplished what they set out to do. And then they explained to their current self how they did it. And it would open with something like, at first you felt blank, but then you blanked. And then you wondered about blank, so you decided to blank. Um, and oftentimes, because this one does take a little bit longer, I often have students start the letter in class and then finish it at home. And of course, I don't collect it. I don't require that they do it. I just teach them how to do it. I will say, the first time I ever used this was during the pandemic, like 2 weeks in where we were all starting to think, what is this, like, is this really happening? Oh my gosh. I thought to myself, what would be great right now, this letter to my future self thing. And I literally sat down and imagined myself several years in the future, and I explained to myself how I successfully gracefully got through the pandemic without freaking out too much, and it helped so much. So again, especially with big things, this really helps. In fact, recently, my best friend since kindergarten, her twin sister suddenly died unexpectedly and terrible. Oh, she was, just so much grief. And so I had her try this to imagine how she might feel in several years and how she started to, kind of work her way through the grief. And she said it really helped. And Of course, just the simplest of strategies is to just teach students the word yet. If they feel like they aren't very confident or not sure they belong, any of those things, literally, if you can just say to yourself, I don't feel comfortable yet, but I probably will. I don't feel like I belong here yet, but I probably will. Yet, one of the smallest, most beautiful words in the English language. Amazing. Amazing. So take a moment, just jot down a few notes, and then let's look at another. This one is embracing failure. Students are going to fail sometimes. You are going to fail sometimes. It's just part of life. How can we embrace it? I read recently about a school who the entire school, once a year, every year, has failure week where they celebrate all the failures from the past year and just really have fun with it and think about how the failures helped them. It just seems like a really cool idea. Highly recommend. Um, so, what are some things that you can do? Well, one possibility is to reframe that failure. And if I'm talking to a student who has failed a test or is like possibly going to fail a class or something, I will often say this: forget about what is happening right now for a minute. Tell me about a time when you experienced a loss that ended up leading to something wonderful. Everyone has plenty of stories like this. And as soon as you tell one of those stories, it makes the current failure just much easier to accept. Because almost all failures in the long run end up leading to something wonderful, sometimes even better. So this is called reframing failure. Another version of this is what's called switching to an optimistic frame. So what researchers discovered was that people who could characterize negative events as temporary, changeable, and localized were able to get through those difficult events with much better outcomes. So here's an example of not doing that. If you get laid off, you say to yourself, I got laid off. This is doing, sorry, this one is doing that. I got laid off, but I will get a new job soon. That's saying that it's temporary. I know if I work at it, I can make that happen. It's changeable, I have control. And at least the rest of my life is going pretty well. The difficulty is localized. So if you can reframe in that way, you're going to have much better outcomes than this second example, which is the opposite. I got laid off. Why do things like this always happen to me? What am I going to do? Why is my whole life so sucky? Makes a huge difference how you frame it. And when you're playing with this idea of the optimistic frame, remember you're trying to do three things: make it temporary, make it changeable, and make it localized, meaning it's just a piece of your life, not your entire life. The optimistic frame. So let's try it. I wouldn't be surprised if some of you feel a little bit like you're drowning under your workload because summer semester always seems like maybe it's going to be easier, and sometimes it's harder because even though you might be working a little bit less, the classes are so compact. But even if you're not currently feeling this, you've felt it at some point. That's, part of what it means to be a teacher is to sometimes feel like you're drowning under your workload. So I want you to write a sentence or a series of sentences. Characterize that feeling as temporary, changeable, and local. See if you can do it. I'm going to go back for a moment to the previous page so you can see the example. Now make a series of statements that is like this center one here, but is about the feeling of feeling overwhelmed by your workload. And finally, just a great way to deal with failure is to have a motto that you can turn to that just really speaks to you. And what I did was I came up with seven, some of them very famous, some of them not so famous. And what I want you to do is pick the one that most speaks to you and write it down. I've often claimed that if I got a tattoo, which I never will because I'm cheap and I don't like pain, it would be this one over this quotation from Ronnie or Maria Rilke. Let everything happen to you, beauty and terror. Just keep going. No feeling is final. All right, so it's time for another brain dump. Um, I'm going to quickly run backward and then forward through the strategies we just looked at to kind of refresh your brain. Okay, and let's go back. All right, go to your Google Doc, spend 2 solid minutes just writing down everything you possibly can remember about these ideas we just talked about. Putting time on the clock. And when you hear my voice, just come back to the Zoom. But for right now, go into that Google Doc and brain dump. Go. All right. Let's head into breakout rooms for a few minutes and talk a little bit about that last set of strategies. Again, which ones are you excited about using? What do you remember about them? How would you use them with your students? Go have a little conversation. I'll see you back in 4 minutes. Those of you who are watching the recording, go back to your Google Doc and keep writing. Um, how might you personally use the strategies? What are you most excited about teaching? Which ones are you most excited about learning yourself? We'll see you back here in 3 minutes. All right. Just realized I've gone a little bit over time, but I'm going to keep you 2 more minutes because the last thing I want to do is this one called Walk Away Happy. Obviously, I want you to walk away happy tonight. So, how would you do that? I'm going to show you. So,
By watching the Braves.
that will help as well. Well,
I'm just playing.
depends on how the Braves do.
I'm just playing, dog. I'm just teasing you.
Okay, everybody. Here's the thing. You've probably been told that it is a good idea to list things you're grateful for. Okay, there was some research that suggests that was good. It is good. But researchers discovered that simply listing things that you're grateful for on a daily basis doesn't help as much as you would think. It's best done just occasionally. Why? Because when you do it, you have a tendency to be repetitive. I did it for a while. It just seemed like Kraft macaroni and cheese and my husband were showing up just over and over, you know, my dogs. So there's another strategy that works better. It's very similar, but it has little tweaks that make it better, and I'm going to show you how to do it right now. It's called Three Blessings. We're just going to do one. And how it works is you write down usually three things, but as I said, we're going to do one. So you're going to write down one thing that went well today. It doesn't need to be earth-shaking. And the important thing is then to write the word because and say why that thing was something that went well. So, for example, I might say, I am grateful that my former student sent me a text today because it reminded me that students do still think about me after they graduate, and that matters to me. So, take a moment, write down one thing that went well today, and then write because. I am grateful that blank because blank. Let me be quiet and let you write. And here's why it works. Because if you're focusing on something that happened that day, it'll always be different, right? And it teaches your brain to hunt the good stuff. It makes it so your brain starts looking for things during the day that you can write down later as the three things you're grateful for. So your elephant brain is designed to make you look for danger and bad things. This counteracts that and helps you keep an eye out for good things. And because it asks you to consider why that's important to you, it just takes it a little deeper. Pretty amazing. All right, so go forth. I'm going to see a lot of you tomorrow or Thursday. So I'll just see you then. But if you have any questions right now, I will stick around for a bit and answer them. So let's remove the spotlight so you can see everybody and wave
Thank
goodbye
you.
and
Okay,
Thank you.
ready to go. Thank you. Bye.
bye.
Y'all do anything else tonight? Or?
Thank you.
No, I think this is it. I take the kids back and
I have one question.
Yes.
On the module for Wednesday, it says to attach a document for the AI
Mhm.
exercise, but I don't see the document. Am I missing it?
Well, that's a good question. So it's the one that's due Wednesday.
Yeah.
Hang on a second. Let me look at that one. 25th.
Or it says if one is maybe.
Yeah. Yeah. So it might, it's some, if I didn't highlight it or make a point of it, I think it's not, there isn't one. And
Okay.
sometimes there- yeah.
Okay. I knew that last week there was one attached, and then it said if one is required, so I just assumed.
I think
Okay.
75% of the time there's one, and 25% of the time there's not.
Gotcha. Okay. That was all.
See you later.
Thank you.
Hello.
Hello.
Katie made me think of this, and it reminded me because I sent you an email Friday about how did you like how I was doing? Am I putting things in the right place in on my personal page, things of this nature? But she told me that we had that chart
Hmm.
that we filled out, and I thought, man, I totally forgot about that. So, and then I thought, well, she probably wanted to discuss it when we meet together on Tuesday in our 10 minutes.
So true.
So I was just wondering if that was true. So I guess it
Yes,
is.
that's exactly what we'll do tomorrow. When we
Okay.
meet, I'll pull up your personal page so we can both see it, and we'll go through it and see how things look.
Okay. All right. Well, I was teasing you about the Braves, even though I do love the
Aren't
Braves.
you going to go watch the Braves?
I'm going to go watch the Braves now, but I was teasing you in the process. All right. Thank you so much.
All right, see you tomorrow.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.